As you probably know, the British Empire became the biggest in the world by ruling over approximately a quarter of the planet's landmass and boasting an impressive population of over 458 million subjects. The empire was so large that it was commonly known as the Sun Never Sets Empire, since one of its territories was always bathed in sunlight. But how did Britain become such a world power? Well, in this video, we're going to take a look at the history of the empire to find out. So stay tuned. Part 1. Setting the stage for imperialism. Before we can understand how the British Empire became so huge, we first need to learn about how Britain came to be. As an island nation, Britain has always been somewhat disconnected from continental Europe, and thus had little reason to fight wars on the continent. This isn't to say that there weren't conflicts in early English history, but they were typically with other island nations like the Irish or the Vikings. The relative peace allowed England to grow and develop without interference, which led to the Magna Carta in 1215, a document that is still seen as foundational to modern democracy. The Magna Carta established that the king couldn't just do whatever he wanted and had to abide by the law. This attitude of not being bothered by others also bled into English foreign policy, which held that England didn't really have any business with controlling foreign lands. However, all of this would change during the reign of Elizabeth thus. Elizabeth came to the throne in 1558, and she reigned for a remarkable 44 years. During her time as monarch, England became a strong naval power and began to explore and conquer parts of North America, including establishing the first English colony in North America at Roanoke in 1585. While the settlement failed, England now had a foothold in the New World, a region that would play a massive role in the future growth of the empire. By the end of Elizabeth's reign, England was well on its way towards becoming an imperial power, and after her death in 1603, the path towards world domination was set in motion. Part 2. Building the foundation. James I of England was also James VI of Scotland, and it was through his claim to the Scottish throne that he would help lay the foundation of the British Empire. You see, England and Scotland had long been separate kingdoms, but they shared a common ancestry and many cultural similarities. So when James Tudor died in 1603 without an heir, the Scottish nobility asked James VI of Scotland if he would accept the English throne as well. Since he was next in line, James agreed, and thus the two kingdoms were united under one monarch. While this treaty made him very popular in Scotland, it made him very unpopular in England, where he was seen as a Scottish king foisted on them by the Scots. In order to try to make himself more likable to the English people, James began to meddle in internal affairs. For example, he dissolved the English Parliament in 1629 and ruled as an absolute monarch for the next 11 years. He also provoked the ire of the English people by granting monopolies to his favorite courtiers, which made him even more unpopular. However, his policies were extremely beneficial for the empire, since they helped set the stage for a period of tremendous growth during the reign of his son, Charles I. The first major event of Charles's reign was the Anglo-Dutch War, which was fought primarily over control of trade routes in the North Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. Britain ultimately won the war, which ensured English dominance of the seas and gave them control over key areas like the Dutch colony of Cape Colony, which would become a critical part of the empire. Not long after this, the English Civil War broke out, which saw Charles executed in 1649 and England become a republic until 1660. Much of the war was fought with the backdrop of growing tensions between England and the Dutch Republic, which led to another Anglo-Dutch War. This conflict resulted in the Treaty of Breda in 1667, which gave England the North American colonies of New Netherland and the Caribbean islands of Tobago and the island of Jamaica. The acquisition of these territories marked a clear turning point for the empire, as it was the first time they had acquired significant territory outside of the British Isles. Just 2 years later, the Second Anglo-Dutch War would further bolster the empire, as it resulted in the capture of the Ceylon, Singapore, and the Molucca Islands. And so, under the rule of Charles I, England's first true empire began to take shape. Part 3. Growing Pains. The reign of Charles II was a tumultuous one for a number of reasons. On one hand, he restored the monarchy in 1660 and married the Spanish princess Catherine of Braganza, who brought with her the important port of Tangier in Morocco. Additionally, England defeated the Dutch in the Anglo-Dutch War of 1672–74, taking control of several of their African colonies. However, in 1673, the Anglo-French War broke out, which saw the English lose most of their North American territories east of the Mississippi River to the French. This war, and the resulting loss of territory, prompted England to begin actively colonizing their remaining North American territories, which led to the establishment of several important colonies, including Georgia in 1704. Yet despite the increased colonial focus, the 7 Years' War saw England once again lose territory in North America. It was only thanks to the war ending in a stalemate that England was able to retain their existing colonies. The instability of this period was further compounded by the War of the Spanish Succession, which Charles tried to stay out of but was forced to join when his nephew, Philip V, invaded Portugal in 1705. All in all, the war went very well for the empire, as it resulted in the acquisition of Gibraltar and the Asiento, a legal right to send enslaved Africans to the Americas. These acquisitions set the stage for the next period of rapid expansion. Part 4. The height of imperialism. The Georgian era saw the British Empire go from possessing around 11% of the world's landmass to possessing over 21%. This incredible feat of expansion started with the War of Jenkins' Ear in 1739, a conflict between Britain and Spain that started over an alleged incident where a British captain cut off the ear of a Spanish sailor. The war resulted in the capture of several valuable Spanish colonies, including the city of Cartagena in present-day Colombia. Then, from 1744 to 1748, Britain fought in the War of Austrian Succession against France, Spain, and the Holy Roman Empire. Though the war didn't go particularly well for Britain, they did manage to acquire the important trading post of Madras in India. The next conflict was the 7 Years' War, which pitted Britain against France, Spain, and their various allies. The war went much better for Britain than the previous one, as they managed to capture Canada and Bengal, as well as gaining further territory in central India. Then, in 1763, Britain and Spain went to war once again, this time over control of the North American continent. The war ended in 1763 with the Treaty of Paris, which gave Britain control of Florida and the entirety of Canada, while also confirming their hold over the majority of the United States. At this point, Britain's North American colonies were so vast that the empire began to refer to them as British America. And despite the fact that the American Revolution would drastically reduce the size of the empire soon after, it's safe to say that the Georgians were a success story for the empire, as they effectively laid the groundwork for the modern world power. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe and check out one of our other videos.